My inspiration for making this tape is the Raleigh number 1 step tape. It's a great recording of a number 1 step in Raleigh, North Carolina, but it lacks some of the things that were a part of life in number 1 step, and to just round out the picture, here are some more sounds of number 1 steps from other cities. Now let's get right to one thing which many of you may have noticed was lacking in the Raleigh tape, and that is the infamous intercept tone, or vacant level tone, called by many freaks the crybaby. This tone was used to indicate a dialing error or a vacant level had been reached. As incredible as it is to believe that this thing ever existed, I can tell you that at the time it seemed rather strange as well. Montreal was a city that was very, very step-filled, and it was filled with vacant level tones. On my first trip to the Montreal area, I arrived in Westmount, which is on the island. In August of '74, it had a number 1 step, and its local calling area was largely step. There were a lot of vacant level tones. In fact, for the first several minutes, vacant level tones from various offices was all I could find.
Now I just dialed 2, now dialing 1. Well, same to you. Dialed 659. Or 4. Pardon me, but there's a wedding going through here. Finally go into something. 1. 1. 1. 9. 9. Those things seem to be very popular. I don't think I've ever seen so many vacant levels. I think I better look at the list of exchanges. Most large cities, that's unnecessary. You just find them.
Notice this number 1 step had dial tone first, and it appears to work differently than the dial tone first in the US, although everything else is very much the same as the US. Oh, here's something that isn't, however. From this same location, here's a call to a number in a Crossbar 5 going to intercept.
670-000.
Je regrette, mais il n'y a pas de service au numéro que vous avez composé. I am sorry, there is no service for the number you have dialed. Je regrette, mais il n'y a pas de service au numéro que vous avez composé. I am sorry, there is no service for the number you have dialed. ¿Qué número
what number?
Except for the bilingual recording, that is typical Bell System centralized intercept. Before the automatic intercept system that served the Bell System in North Carolina came in, this is what used to do it. And we'll be hearing more of this later in this presentation. Another thing you hear in number one step land is the washed out reorder, which occurs on vacant levels and blocked levels. This is a brief call to it, which I really should have sat there and recorded a few seconds of.
Now dialing 5. 5.
Ah, yes, that is the sound, isn't it? For those of you who don't remember it, you don't know what I'm talking about. But it would happen very often that reorders would get that quality in the selector banks, where they would put reorder on the 11th terminal. The selectors would go there either when all trunks were busy, or when your call was being blocked to prevent a dialing error, or very often just because vacant levels were busied out. Now here's a quiz for some of you old-timers. What city might this have been recorded in?
8, 6, 5, 9.
There's a Cognitronics number readback machine with photographic film announcements. That's probably from New York, right? Well, now let me play you the same call again, except let it go a little longer.
8, 6, 5, 9, 9, 2, 5.
Now, only a number one step can have a reorder that sounds like that. That's definitely not from New York City, because New York City didn't have any number one steps. It was a Crossbar 1 and panel town. This is from New Haven, Connecticut. I'll play the whole call now. Before it starts announcing the number, you'll hear a series of clicks that are associated with long-distance calls from number one steps. That's the ANIB, Automatic Number Identification System.
Eight, 6, 5, 9, 9, 2, 5.
And while we're on the subject of reorder tones in number one step, there's a certain type of tone plant which is most often found on Crossbar 5. But when a number one step has one of these, its reorder can sound like this. Another call from this New Haven step features a recording that anyone who played with the phone in Connecticut will remember from the 70s, and another vacant level tone.
The 911 emergency number is not in effect in the area where you are. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial operator, or look in the front of the phone book for emergency numbers. Thank you. This is a recording. The 9...
Now here's something you did hear in Raleigh combined with something you didn't. The Crossbar 5 that I'm about to call has pseudo-modern tones, just like two of them in Raleigh. But this call goes to an old-fashioned centralized intercept system in New Haven, which Raleigh didn't have anymore by the time I recorded it.
The number you have reached is not in service at this time. Please be sure you have the right number in mind and have dialed it correctly. This is a recorded announcement. The number you have reached is not in service at this time.
Plays the recording twice and then goes to the operator. I didn't stay on for that. In the Bell system, there were several different types of digit-absorbing selectors, each of which had a different logic. The typical kind of digit-absorbing selector was found in Raleigh and in Atlanta and most of the places where I saw STEP. But there were certain places, such as Fairfield, Connecticut and Worcester, Massachusetts, that had a very advanced type of digit-absorbing selector. This selector had the ability to intercept most dialing errors in a way that a regular digit-absorbing selector could not. I'll give you an example. First, let me pick up this prepay coin phone here, which is served out of the 753 prefix, area 617. Wow, that's something unusual right there. I pick up a prepay phone, haven't put a dime in yet, and there's continuous ring sound bleeding through onto the line. It is very common to hear neighborhood phones ringing in the background of an idle line, but continuous ring would indicate, for example, perhaps the central office is supplying jingle juice to some remote PBX or something over another cable pair in this same cable that serves this phone line. That's a possibility.
Dialed 8, which cuts in the selector.
The digit 8 dialed initially cuts into a second selector. You can hear the cut-in noise, which sounds like this. That's because there are several prefixes in the Worcester area that begin with 8. There are no prefixes in the Worcester area that begin with 7-8. However, the 7 has to be absorbed because there is a prefix 753 and other 7-5s that are right in the same office, and they want to absorb that. Now, having seen the 8 cut in, you know that if I dial a 7 and it's absorbed, and then the 8, we're going to end up in the same place we were if we just dialed 8 initially, right? Well, here's a 7. Notice the 7's absorbed, and then I'll dial the 8.
Okay, that wasn't absorbed. 8.
For those of you who know the logic of digit-absorbing selectors, what you've just heard should be impossible, but this is an advanced one. It does something different. The 7 absorbs, and then the 8 goes to that intercept tone. And by the way, that intercept tone is coming from the selector itself. It's not going into any particular trunk. You can tell because there's no cut-in noise. It just kind of ticks, and there it is. Here's an initial 2 intercepted in the same way.
Okay, 2.
Now, if you weren't listening carefully, you might think that 2 is a vacant level in this office, but it's not. There's a prefix 752, and it's on the 2 level of the first selector. As I dial 752, notice the 7 and then the 5 are absorbed, and then the 2 cuts in, instead of going to that intercept tone.
Okay, 7. 5, 2. 1. 2. 1. 1. Okay, so it's an exchange.
And the only way you can cut in on that level, the 2 level, is by dialing 752. You can't get there by dialing 72.
Dialing 7-2. We get dump also.
You can't get there by dialing 52.
Okay, 5 is dump.
That eliminates a lot of dialing errors. Well, I think we've heard enough intercept tones for one day. 2 more calls before we leave Worcester. First, a number in a Crossbar 5 that's going to Centralized intercept.
This is a recording. I'm sorry. The number you have reached is not in service at this time. If you need assistance, please stay on the line and the operator will answer.
I came across a reorder in a nearby Bell System CDO, a small step, which had a payphone stuck on it. The totalizer, which, among other things, makes the coin sounds, was malfunctioning.
Oh, wow. Sounds like a coin phone going bananas on there.
I think I can say that Worcester's the only place I ever visited where I could be entertained just by picking up a prepay phone and not doing anything at all, not even putting in a dime. However, in checking the tapes, I did find another example in Annapolis, Maryland, a neighborhood that had this. That was a payphone on the campus of St. John's College. Every time you'd pick it up, there would be the local ring. Probably the same phenomenon. Now here's something else which was not included on the Raleigh tape, and that is the sound of making a long-distance call. Here are some long-distance calls from the Atlanta 6-3, formerly called Melrose, step. At the time these were made, early 1980, the 6-3 step was using the Northwest TSPS for the CAMA function. That is, if you dialed 1+, a long-distance call from your home, you would go to the same ESS system that handles person-to-person and collect calls, and they would use that in order to make a record of the call. You dial 1 and you're connected to TSPS, then you dial the 7 or 10-digit number. There's a ground test after the first digit, that's for party lines. When the number's complete, the trunk goes off hook, and then the ANIB system does its thing. You hear a series of clicks. There's even a high-pitched tone which is sent along your sleeve lead to help find out who you are. In these examples, I'm calling directory assistance in Alberta, area code 403. And this is a very long call. It's set up in a linear fashion with MF signaling just about every step of the way. You don't get to hear any of these MFs. But the first set of MFs occurs when the ANIB system sends my number to TSPS. Then TSPS MFs to the Northwest 4A, which MFs to the Downtown Atlanta 4E, which MFs to the Rockdale 4A, the regional center for that part of the U.S., which then MFs to an SP1 switch, that's a Northern Tel electronically controlled crossbar switch in a city in Saskatchewan whose name I won't say because I don't know how it's going to digitize on real audio. Then the SP1 switch in that city, MFs to the Calgary 4A, which dumps us into the directory assistance trunk and we hear a ringtone.
assistance. Go ahead. Stretch for assistance.
Notice how I went back to dial tone exactly 10 seconds after the operator released. Now, number one step does not have that feature of dumping the caller back to dial tone when the person you call hangs up. But this is happening here because the TSPS sees that the call I made is on hook for 10 seconds after having answered. It disconnects the call and unsoups the trunk from my step. As soon as the trunk circuit in my step sees that trunk unsouping, it pulls the ground off the sleeve and the whole connection falls down, and I'm back on line finder and I get a new dial tone. Now, if you call somebody locally in a number one step and they hang up on you, you'll stay on that connection until a switchman takes you down. In the old network, when you called a long-distance number and whistled it off, you would drop back to whichever tandem was at the end of the first 2600 controlled link. In this next call to the same directory assistance, that happens to be the Rockdale 4A, which at this time was the regional center for the entire southeastern corner of the country. When I whistle it off, you'll hear the trunk flash in the handshake, and then when I don't MF anything, it will eventually time out to the recording. And by the way, the supervision handshake will be very, very quiet because there's no DC trunk supervision in this connection. The supervision doesn't go all the way back to my step. In fact, the TSPS trunk stays off hook from the moment I dial the last digit till the time it decides to disconnect me or I hang up.
Sorry, your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try again? This is a recording. 404-1. We're sorry, your call did not go through. Will you please hang up and try again? This is a recording. 404-1. We're sorry, your call...
Before I close out this segment, there are two more classic reorders that I need to put on, and both were gotten from the Atlanta Downtown Step in 1977. The first one occurs in steps that use the type of tone plant we call city ring. The second one occurs in steps using the type of tone plant that we call crossbar ring or crossbar 5 ring. Well, that's it for this segment, but there will be more to come. We haven't heard any double rings yet on number one step, and that was a very common thing. Everywhere except Raleigh, just about. Also, centralized intercept on an actual number in a step has not been heard yet, so there will be more. The final segment of Worcester's background ring was edited to make it twice as long as what was originally on the tape.